The path to destruction is often the simplest thing. It's doing what's easy in the moment and easiest short term. I don't see purpose in being a pair of hands for AI. There is a tipping point. There is a point where you are the operator using AI. And there's a part where AI is dictating to you what to do, and you are the flesh hands.
The whole no ChatGPT or yes, I'm going to abdicate all my responsibility to ChatGPT. Those two ends of the spectrum, either one of those is going to be successful in the future.
Information, listen to them, especially in maybe situations where they don't feel heard. And I wonder if the susceptibility of a profession to being disrupted really depends on the capacity to absorb those conversations.
How many veterinary practices do you know where on their services page, they list out specifically how they approach a surgery, how they approach anesthesia, and what the cost is of all these things, so that we're actually empowering consumers to make better decisions by being more transparent? All right. Welcome, everyone, to the AI Veterinary Brief, where we try to bring you the so what of exciting developments, use cases, and watch out with the specific veterinary lens. And today we have a very special guest. Adam, can you tell us a little more about the gentleman sharing our screen with us?
Yeah, Aaron just came in a couple of minutes ago. We're really happy to have him. But besides that, we have Dr. Andy Rourke. So Andy and I have known each other. I think I met Andy when I was in my second or third year of veterinary school, when you were really beginning to do some of the lectures and start to kind of put your name out there. I think a few things about Andy. He's won Speaker of the Year at more conferences than most vets have been to. He started his own online community that really brought practitioners together in person with Uncharted. And I think for me has always been this kind of pulse check on not just where the profession is at in terms of clients and patients, but kind of the spirit and of the average practitioner, and really connected people very deeply, bringing humor. He's a CrossFitter. He's an improvisational comedian. He is a father and a husband, and today a guest on the pod. Andy, welcome.
Hey, thanks, man. That's amazing.
Good to see you.
I've never felt so welcome on a podcast before.
We'll leave it there. Thanks for coming out, Andy.
Yeah, that's great. I've got what I needed. I got my head swell. I'm gonna go about my day. No, thanks for having me.
In all the ample free time that you have, Andy, one thing I'd love to know from you and our other co-hosts here is, we've got a real action-packed show that we're excited to dig in with you on today. There has been an incredible amount of developments and news, just a real fire hose of AI over the last, say, month. I wonder, if we weren't talking about this, what would you want to talk about? What's got you particularly excited about or concerned about?
So it's a little bit off the path of AI, but not too far. And I'm not sure how tied together these are. I think the most interesting thing that's going on right now, as we're recording this, is the Competition and Markets Authority, CMA in the United Kingdom, just released their long-awaited report on the veterinary sector. And I am fascinated by it. I think it's the philosophic discussions around it are really interesting. I think it's interesting about what it means for cultural differences between the United States and the United Kingdom. It just, for the people who aren't aware of this, in the UK, there's just been a report that's been put out that is going to make it so that, well, anyway, the report says that vets in the UK should be required to publish their prices, to disclose their corporate affiliations, and to make it easier for pet owners to compare costs and services, and also access to cheaper medications. And so there's some rules around medications and transparency there, and disclosure of where people can get those medications, and also price caps on medications from veterinarians. And so it's the type of stuff I cannot see anything like this in the United States. There's no precedent for it. I can't see it, but I think it's fascinating to look at. And I've had a lot of spirited debates about, is this good or not? Or what does this mean? And I think you can get into the weeds. I think that there's just a lot of meat on that bone to sort of chew on for a while. And so anyway, this week, when we're recording. That's the thing I'm most interested in right now.
I think, super fascinating. I'm so glad you brought it up too. It was actually a discussion last time of ours on the increasing market pressures towards price transparency. You think it's inevitable? I actually think, and Adam mentioned you could, or actually John mentioned you could vibe code something in a weekend that would basically create, a lot more transparency of prices across the industry. You could have an AI agent call all these practices, begin to build out a back end and a website that showed you the comparison tool. But that's going to happen. Like it sounds so far from where we've been, but the tech is there. It's going to be there for corporate transparency as well. So it'd be really curious if we have this kind of top-down approach in the UK, but then here we see something bottom up from entrepreneurs that are effectively creating the same system.
I think that that's a great tie-in for AI. So here's my concern around AI with something like that. And you're already starting to see it. And I don't know that people have put two and two together, but I see two different things happening, right? So I see this push for transparency and empowered pet owners, especially around pricing. There's a lot of talk about pricing. And then there's a separate conversation where people in the practices are saying, how do we educate pet owners about our value and the value of our services? How do we get people to understand what we do? And I think that may be a problem with AI, because if you say, go find me the cheapest place to get my, I don't know, even just to get my dog neutered, say, right, go find me the cheapest place. AI can go and find you the cheapest place. Is it going to communicate to you the value in what you get at place A versus place B? Because a neuter is not a neuter. And again, that's not slamming anybody. It's just there's a reality in how are we practicing medicine? What is the standard of care of the practice? Those things are changing. And I think that you are going to see more and more market segmentation where you see practices that say, we are the high-end, most aggressive technical treatment. And somebody else who goes, we are the mid-range technical treatment. And it's a perfectly acceptable standard. You're not going to get all the bells and whistles, but maybe accessibility is a little bit better. Price is going to be a little bit better. But, there's going to be some trade-offs, maybe in service, maybe in, in the level of diagnostic workup that your pet gets. And then there's going to be hey, we're all about value, buddy. There's going to be the Aldi of vet medicine. That's like, get in here. If we got it, you can have it cheap and just get it done. And again, it sounds like I'm teasing. I'm not. There's people who want that. Don't ask AI the right questions. Then you are not going to get the right answer. And I worry that, one of the downsides of AI is it strips away a lot of nuance. It's almost like a tool that's built for the social media generation, right? It strips out a lot of nuances as, here is the answer. Bang. I saw a post of this guy online talking about how with AI summaries, he was able to read a classic novel every day. And I thought, no, you're freaking not, dude. Like, no, you're not. Like, that's, you might be reading the summary. That is not the same thing. You don't get to read an AI summary and say, I understand War and Peace. I understand, Jane Eyre. No, you don't. And again, if you just want to know what a summary is, that's fine. But there's a lot of nuance that's lost. And so part of it, I wonder about using AIs for this type of search. Is that going to unlock a new level of frustration and challenge for vet practices to articulate the difference between them and the other vet clinic down the street? I think it's very bad for everybody to have a race to the bottom in terms of pricing. Let's all figure out how we can work as cheaply as we can possibly work. I don't think that's good for our profession. I see there's just a lot of straight up downward pressure, which I get. But also, I think that can go a little bit too far.
My goodness, this is going to be a spicy, amazing episode. I can already tell. Let's skip the roundtable. Let's just dive right in. I want to go around.
I love roundtables where only I get to go. I think that's the perfect roundtable for me.
Andy, you got right to the good stuff. That's what we're here for. And I want to go around and hear what my co-hosts think. Aaron, we would love your thoughts on Andy's very thoughtful points there.
Yeah, I think that there's probably a lot that we need to dig into, right? So even if we just start with something like the price transparency thing, right? So what are the ways in which the clinics are communicating value that go beyond it? And it's interesting, like the example that you brought up of like, and maybe we'll just jump right into the piece. I've talked with veterinarians who have had that exact same experience where somebody walks into the room and they say, what does ChatGPT say about this? And how do they respond to that? What do they do with that? And some of the veterinarians are just like, no, that's it. No, I'm not going to pay attention to that. I'm not really interested in that. And the thing that like, I don't know, maybe this is an outside perspective. I'm not a veterinarian, but the thing that immediately comes to mind for me would be something like, well, ChatGPT has access to a very limited set of information. The only information that ChatGPT has is the information that you put into it. As a veterinarian, you have way more access to information. So let's work with that information and contextualize it in a better way so that we're able to produce a better result overall, right? And the whole like, no ChatGPT or yes, I'm going to like advocate all my responsibility to ChatGPT, like those two ends of the spectrum, neither one of those is going to be successful in the future. Like that's just a fact, right? And so how do we equip people appropriately with the things that they need in order to be able to navigate this new normal? That's the kind of stuff that like, because your article, and if people have not read the article, please go and read it. I think it's one of the best examples of somebody who's deeply thinking about these issues. You say things like, I will never go back to not using AI scribing.
Yeah.
And at the same time, there are these things that I'm really worried about. And so it so clearly demonstrates the tension that exists in the profession today. Like it's such a moment of like, this is exactly how I think the majority of veterinarians feel about it. And so that's why I absolutely go and read it if you haven't done so. But yeah, I would like to think through that a little bit more with you. Like, how do you think about that? How do you think about like the two ends of the spectrum are not acceptable? And so how do we operate somewhere in the middle? And what can we say to people in order to get them to that middle ground?
Yeah. Oh man. I think this is a great question. I am 100% on board with you. I think no is the wrong answer. I think no is the wrong answer. I think no indicates to me, and people won't like this, to me, it indicates insecurity. And I think that that's probably how the pet owners see it. I don't know if they think about it that way necessarily, but that's what I suspect that they see. If I walked into the auto mechanic and I was like, "Hey, this is what ChatGPT said about my car," and he was like, "No, we don't listen to that here," I think I would have a problem with that. I was talking to my daughter recently about being a veterinarian, and she spent the Saturday with me. So we were working the clinic on Saturday, and she was just sort of shadowing me, and she was asking me about sort of why we have conversations sort of the way that we do. And I can't remember the context about it, but my point to her was that there is an innate power imbalance in the exam room. It's significant. There are few things where you have to go and do business with someone who has information that you don't have access to. And it sucks when that happens. I hate when I go to the auto mechanic and they're like, we need to replace these filters. And also this timing belt is about at the end of its rope. I have no idea. I don't know if that's true, and I'm standing there and the guy's like, we should do this. And it's $780, and, that is a feeling that I don't like. And I'm sure other people don't like it. And it doesn't happen a whole lot anymore. Like there's just not a lot of places where the knowledge difference between the service provider and the customer is all that big. I've got some guys painting my house today. I don't know their business, but at the end, I can stand back and look at my house and say, did you do a good job? Is there paint splattered everywhere? Like I am happy with this job that I got. But when the guy fixes my car, he's like, here you go. I have no idea. He could have put bubble gum and duct tape in there. I have no idea. And so anyway, but vet medicine is kind of that way. And so people don't like that. I suspect that we are going to see ChatGPT, and this is the way people used to complain about Google. I think people want to reduce that power imbalance. I mean, I think that they want to be an educated consumer, especially when they walk in and the bill is $500, $600, $800, $1,200. They want to be informed, and this provides that avenue to them. I think that if you look at it in a really negative headspace, you say they're trying to be the doctor. They're trying to take this authority. Like, no, they're not. They're just trying to be informed. They're worried about getting taken advantage of in a world where, let's be honest, it feels like everybody's trying to take advantage of you all the time. And I hate that it feels that way, but it does. So anyway, I think that no ChatGPT, I think it's got to be out. And I think hands off the wheel ChatGPT, that's the thing that's most interesting to me, is kind of like what that looks like and the slippery slope that's more in that direction. I think that your effective veterinarian smiles and says, tell me what you got. Tell me what they said. And then Aaron, I really think that your presentation is exactly the type of script that we should all internalize and say, hey, ChatGPT is great. I'm really glad that you looked into this and that you're doing research and that you're thinking about this. There's a lot of things that ChatGPT does well. It's limited by the information that it has, and it obviously can't see or examine your pet. And so let's look at what it has, and let me tell you what I'm kind of seeing here. And let's see where we land and what we agree is the best plan. But again, if you come to loggerheads with ChatGPT, if you are like, this is what we should do, and the person's like, ChatGPT says, don't do that, it's the exact opposite, I think you should get in there and sort that out. I really do. You know what I mean? I don't think that you should just say, I'm wearing the white coat, this is what we're doing. I don't think people respond to that anymore.
I wonder if it might, I wonder if it might be helpful, Andy, just to kind of frame up this article a little bit, because Aaron alluded to it, but it really was, I think, the basis for reaching out to you at this particular time. So you wrote this article for today's veterinary business called The Path to Greatness. And in there kind of begin to explore, I think, some of the really interesting philosophical questions of the role of the veterinarian in this new world, and maybe some areas where you feel that there's some tension or concern. And you were sort of describing these scenarios of ChatGPT in the exam room, but I just wanted to maybe read from a little bit of the article, because you actually talk about an interaction that you directly had with a case that I think would be really interesting to add some kind of context to this discussion.
Sure.
So in the first little bit, you say, after the initial examination, Melissa looked at me and tearfully asked, is my dog suffering? I had no idea what to say, so I took a deep breath, steadied myself, and replied, well, it depends. Let's talk about it. And that's when Toby, her partner in this, leaned forward, phone in hand, and said, I'm going to ask ChatGPT what to do. And then you write, as I tried to process what Toby just said, I couldn't help but wonder if this was our future. Will tide of technology lift us from all uncertainty and deliver us to clarity and bliss? Looking at Melissa's suddenly sour face, I wasn't so convinced that everyone is sold on the idea of technology as the solution to all our problems. So, maybe just give us context about that case. How did that come about? Because there's just so many Venn diagrams of oh my gosh, Andy Rourke's clients during euthanasia are asking ChatGPT. It's interesting.
So the context is important. I think this is really interesting. So the case specifically was that terrible case that everybody in practice has seen, where you've got a dog that is fundamentally healthy, but has osteoarthritis to the point that its quality of life is not acceptable, right? This is a big golden retriever, and it was obese, yes, but it was a very big golden retriever who was not able to get up because of osteoarthritis. And I've got this married couple, and the dog is soiling itself. You know what I mean? They're cleaning this. They've shaved part of the dog to try to keep it clean. The dog's 100 pounds. The husband can kind of work it with a sling and get the dog outside. But it's not easy. And the wife is 5 months pregnant. So they have this imminent, boy, I feel sorry for anybody about to have a baby. I'll just pause right now and just say, what a disastrous position to be in.
Exactly.
So our listeners know, my fiance could literally go into labor at any moment here.
And you're here doing a podcast like a champion.
What a commitment.
What? Yeah, that's exactly. And that's what I want people to take home from this podcast. If you want to make it in the podcast game, you got to be committed, like ignoring a baby committed.
I mean, there's just so many false alarms. How am I to know when the real one is?
Yeah. All right.
Perfect.
Anyway, so, but that, all joking aside, but that was true. And she said, I'm really struggling with this, and she's crying, and she goes, I'm really emotional, and I usually am very decisive. I'm really struggling to be decisive about what to do here. I think probably it's kind of hormonal, and I've got this got this baby that's growing inside of me. And then, but it was a terrible case. I think a lot of people in practice have seen this. And the problem is the dog looks at you, right? And it's just got this happy golden retriever face. The tongue is lolling out. If you put a bowl of food down, it dives into it. It wags its tail when they come into the room. It is absolutely heart-wrenching to see this. And so, and all joking aside, and to suck the humor out of this, but like, they made an appointment for vaccines. That's what they made an appointment for. And so I walk in, I've got a DHPP vaccine in my hand, and this is the conversation that I'm having. And it's fine. It's not the first time. And it won't be the last time that we have this. And sometimes pet owners, they schedule vaccines because they can't bear to say, I'm coming for euthanasia. And she knew what she was coming for, and she really wanted to talk. And I think that both of them kind of knew what needed to happen and what they needed to do. But it was obviously very hard for them and very emotional. And so we're having this conversation. And when you have these conversations, there's not a right answer. There's not a yes, you should euthanize this dog. Definitely. There's not a no. Even if you say yes, you should do this, you've got to honor the emotional journey that these people are having, and honor that they've struggled with it, and celebrate the sacrifices they made and how hard they've worked. And like, there's sort of a process to helping people to kind of come to a peaceful place with where they are, and to ultimately kind of let go of what they've held onto so tightly. And that's kind of where we're going. I don't know if it's going to happen today. Maybe we just need to talk about it and need to think about it, and they'll come back. I don't know. And there's not a wrong answer. It's a deeply human position to be in, right? It is very much about the spiritual, emotional aspects of being human. And that's why it caught me so off guard when the husband was like, I'm going to ask ChatGPT and see what he says. And I thought that was so like jarringly out of place. I think, and again, I've thought about this, all I can figure out is that he recently discovered ChatGPT. You know what I mean? And when people find it for the first time and they're like, this thing knows the answer to everything. That's all I can think is he's having that experience. But he was like, let's ask ChatGPT what to do. And I was really floored by the idea that AI would hold the keys to this really almost poetic question. And I that's when I really started to kind of roll around with it. It was like, boy, if we're going to ask ChatGPT these questions, what does that mean? And where does that go? And that made me really start to think about both how we actually use AI, and then also how the public is going to use AI, and then how the public's perception of us changes as they become comfortable and start to use AI.
What I think the thing I found most beautiful about what you said, Andy, was the honoring of the emotional journey of the pet owner. That to me is the gold. Like when I see a vet who really inspires clients and others, it's because they do that so well. And I would imagine that's a big part of your tremendous success, is the ability to relate emotionally and to connect on that level. I bring naturally a different perspective here. I work to bring kind of the pet owner perspective, the consumer perspective to this podcast, as I've done in my work as well. I'm very much not a veterinarian. I just admire the hell out of what you do. I wonder if what we're seeing isn't so much a novel toy to play with, but maybe it's in part a rejection of the paternalistic model that many consumers see veterinary medicine operating under. And I actually think, one thing that you said, that it kind of feels like this is something deeply ingrained in our culture. It's around the price transparency and the race to the bottom. And you had mentioned, I want to dig into this with you and really, hear you. Race to the bottom, I can get on board with you. That is not good for this industry. And you'd mentioned that if we're just going to kind of let AI dictate where we go, we're going to have imperfect results. But what I'm wondering, and I'd earnestly love your thoughts on this, is if AI doesn't take us to the right place, I mean, AI is a tool,
right?
Isn't that our fault because we haven't given it the context to that? And it wouldn't, we've actually never given the context to pet owners. For example, how many veterinary practices do you know where on their services page, they list out specifically how they approach a surgery, how they approach anesthesia, and what the cost is of all these things, so that we're actually empowering consumers to make better decisions by being more transparent. So I'm just wondering why you're thinking here. I kind of, from my maybe ignorant view, is kind of like, no, you've got to kind of come to me in order to figure out what's best for your pet, compared to like, we're just super transparent with the consumer and allow them to, be empowered and make the decision.
Yeah. So this is a really good question. Now we're kind of getting into this is even, there's AI pieces to this, but this is actually a larger question that's going to get me in a lot of trouble, and we're going to do it.
That's what we're here to do.
And we're going to do it. Okay. So, I write a lot about contextualized care and spectrum of care, and I think it's very important to meet pet owners where they are. And at the same time, I'm starting to get a little bothered by what feels like these institutional drum beats for veterinarians are responsible for keeping prices down and keeping care affordable. Like, it's on veterinarians, it's spectrum of care. You need to meet the pet owner where they are. You need to work with these pet owners. And I get it to a degree, right? I'm very much in favor of meeting people where they are. And at the same time, if you think about it and you say, like, let's switch industries to make this clear. Imagine we're talking about the hotel industry. Are you going to go to the Four Seasons and say, look, spectrum of renting, like, you need to meet clients where they are and make sure that you're accessible to them? I think you're not. And again, I'm not trying to say I don't stay at the Four Seasons. I can't afford the Four Seasons. Is that how I want to spend my money? Do I have a problem with them? No, I don't. That's just not what they're doing. It's the same thing. And think about this, and you say, I think it's a really good question. But I'll put this back to you this way and sort of say, what if you had on your website and you said, hey, we do this, and we spay pets this way, and we do these services and blah, blah, blah. I'd be kind of like, look, imagine that restaurants did that. Imagine that you looked at the Michelin star gourmet restaurant, and then you looked at Chili's, right? Would you be able to understand why the gourmet restaurant is the gourmet restaurant from their pricing structure? Or would you look at Chili's and be like, that looks, like, I would not, I don't know that I would know what I was looking at. I guess that's the thing. And I'm not a big foodie, but my worry with that is, when I say the race to the bottom, my worry generally is making everything about price. I don't think that pet owners understand the fallout of making everything about price. I'll give you the best example of this is, imagine this was human healthcare. And you said to me, Andy, you go to this hospital and get it for a quarter of the price of that hospital. I would be very wary of racing to the low-cost leader for my own healthcare. I would, unless I understood what we were talking about. In some cases, I'd be like, this is great. In other cases, I would be terrified. They're like, I don't know. Do I need this? I remember before I was a veterinarian, I went to a vet clinic, right, with my own dog, and he was going to get neutered. And he was my wife's and my trial dog. Like, he was the surrogate child that we were going to have. We weren't even married yet, but I was like, we were trying it out. We were thinking about it. And then we wanted to see if we could keep a mammal alive. And so we got this dog, and he was like our surrogate child. And I went there, and the vet tech came out, and she was like, we're going to do this neuter. And we didn't have any money. Like, we were in grad school. Like, things were tight. And she said, do you want IV catheter? Do you want IV fluids? And I said to her, I have no idea. And she's like, well, and she was like, it's your choice. And I have no idea. I mean, this is pre-vet. I have no idea. I don't know what the risks are. I don't know what the benefits are. I don't know, is this, what are the chances there's going to be a problem? Is this 1 in 100? Or is it 1 in 1,000? Or is it 1 in 10? Or is it 1 in 5? Like, those things matter, and I don't have that information. And so if you just said, this is the cheapest way to get your dog neutered, I think that would make me worried. To your point, pet owners are going to ask ChatGPT what they're going to ask ChatGPT. And I don't think that we get to control how they search. I don't know that we want to facilitate side-by-side price comparison without context. Full stop. Like, I don't think that that's what we want to try to facilitate. And I think that there's good reason for that. And again, the market is the market. There will be some people who are like, we're going to win the price game. Our whole practice is set up for us to win the price game. Those practices are going to love it. And they're going to try to make everybody else play the price game because that's where they're going to win. Some people are the Four Seasons. Some people are the Michelin star restaurant. Like, they don't want to play that game. And I totally get it.
I guess where I'm stuck, Andy, is, what you said, I completely agree with. We don't want to play this game without context. But where I'm stuck is this is happening. This is going to happen. It's going to continue to happen more and more. And if we withhold this context, if we decide to say we're going to dig our heels in, we're not going to tell you that we're the Michelin star, that this is our story, that this is why things cost what they do, or that we're the Chili's and this is our story, this is why we cost the things they do. The AI is not going to have that context, and you're walking into the exact situation you're describing. So I guess I'm just wondering, like, how do you do you see this as, like, how does the industry win here? If this is going to be how consumers are going to use the tool, how do we win by just deciding to not play the game?
Well, I think that that's key. I think deciding when and how you're going to play the game and when you're not going to play the game, I think that's key to thriving in the AI era. I think the idea that this is a game that we have to play, I think that's a false perception. And I don't think you have to play that. So so I'll give you an example. So I run a website called drandyrourke.com, and we get a lot of visits. And I was very aware when of how Google worked for a long time. And we played the SEO game really hard. And I was like, great, I want people to find my stuff. And then, between the hundreds of articles on drandyrourke.com and the hundreds of podcasts I've done on Cone of Shame that have transcripts, and the hundreds of podcasts I have done with Uncharted Veterinary Conference where we talk about practice management advice, I have no doubt, and I'm not trying to be arrogant here at all, I hope I'm not coming out this way, I have no doubt that if you ask veterinary management questions to ChatGPT, they will use my stuff to answer your questions. Do I get credit for that? I do not. Do I get, referred to my website? I do not. If you go and you Google it and it has the Google AI box at the top that summarizes, gives you a quick answer, it's pulling that from my stuff. Like almost certainly I've written so much in this very niche industry. And so, it's pulling my stuff. And it doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me. I'm fine for people to have that. I'm happy for them to have that. If my job was selling this information, would I have a problem with it? Yeah, I think I probably would. I don't think I would put it out where my stuff could get devoured by AI and served up if it's going to compete with me. And so, like, that's just an example of, you have to look at this and say, given that AI exists and it is hoovering, what is it strategically advantageous for me to feed to it and let it use as a model? And what am I not interested in putting out into the public domain for AI to pick up and use? And I just think I think that is a question that everybody has to ask. And so, yeah, I think not participating is a smart strategic move in some regards. Just because people want to, it's no different than it's been. People have wanted to have a full price list of everything vets do for a long time. I go back to the idea, and I've seen this, and I'm sure you guys have seen this before. I've heard stories for years and years and years of people who go and they get the Antech price list for what diagnostic tests cost. And then they look at the diagnostic test, and then their vet charges them a markup of that, and they call and they complain. They say, I know what you paid for this test. And again, you go, that's the access to that information I don't think they know what value is. If I said, if you knew that a blood tip panel costs $50 and I'm your vet and I did it and I charged you $100, I don't know that you have a fair representation of what it costs for me and my training and my experience to interpret the blood work, to take the time to get on the phone with you and to explain it and to follow up with you. Like, all these services are peripheral, and we sort of charge for our knowledge and the experience that we deliver and stuff like that. But I don't know that your average person understands that necessarily. And so again, I don't think that we're headed to a place where everything can get boiled down to a number, and that you should necessarily open yourself up to people to be able to critique everything that you do. I think that would lead us to a world where people are like, I'm going to go get this vaccine over here and this vaccine over here and things like that. And that doesn't mean you can't have some price transparency. I feel like I'm arguing against that, but I'm really not trying to. But I think that there is a general amount of information you share with people, and they kind of get the idea of what your practice is like and what services you deliver and what that experience is like. And then they can opt in or they can opt out. But I don't know that veterinarians there's benefit to saying you can look at what I charge for this vaccine and this vaccine and this vaccine and price shop and try and price compare. And again, I don't know that pet owners really, I don't think they want that. I think they just want to kind of understand, is this place a good match for me or not? And I think there's other ways to do that than listing out your prices without any context.
Maybe a couple points on that. Like, I think one of the things that you're highlighting is probably this push towards further segmentation of the care models that's going to have to occur. And I think, to your point, practices are going to have to do a much better job articulating kind of the how and why we practice, because at the end of the day, back to your Chili's or restaurant example, like you have an idea of the experience that you're getting when you're going to those two different restaurants. The moment you look on Google, when you don't necessarily get that with veterinary care, in part because I don't necessarily know that there's been a lot of emphasis on veterinarians having to tell that story, maybe articulate how they practice and why they're different. And I think there'll probably be further fragmentation of this. There's been interesting, I was having a conversation with the practice a few months back on a project, and they were saying, look, we already saw clients that were doing this price shopping. So we actually go out of our way now that we have a client that starts asking those questions to make it very clear kind of who we serve and who we're a good fit for and who we're not, in part because we want the people to come through our door to feel like we're going to be the right fit and they're kind of bought into our care model. And so I think that's a really interesting piece of it. Maybe a deeper question, though, kind of back to the case that you were referencing. Obviously there's people who are going to want kind of like what is going on. I need the kind of the medical diagnosis. But I think for a lot of people, ChatGPT is now becoming much more of like an emotional support. It's being able to reframe, remix information, listen to them, especially in maybe situations where they don't feel heard. And I wonder if the susceptibility of a profession to being disrupted really depends on the capacity to absorb those conversations. So maybe I'll give you two examples, right? You have the veterinarian who recognizes, like you were, the importance of that emotional journey, creates space for that conversation. Clearly ChatGPT still got brought up, but the reality is that conversation then kind of comes to a veterinarian and you're able to be a meaningful part of that discussion, versus maybe another one where that appointment time is 15 minutes. You don't get that time with the veterinarian. They've recently changed their staff around. So you have to like kind of reboot the relationship, and you've squeezed out probably the most valuable part of the relationship and that trust. And now you're kind of back to zero. And now it turns out what's left is the most commoditized price of part of the experience, as opposed to, well, I didn't really care about the price because I liked you. I trusted you. Even if I had the answers, I wanted to go to you for guidance. And I wonder, is the profession doubling down on the parts of the experience that are likely to make us more susceptible to these tools kind of displacing or disintermediating the relationship?
I think that's spot on. And so I want to sort of summarize the points that I've kind of made up to this point. Again, to me, it's not about a lack of price transparency. I think that veterinarians should fight the commoditization of veterinary medicine as hard as they possibly can. We are a service business, not a commodity. And there are a lot of groups that would like to make us a commodity. They would like to make vet medicine, put it into a box and let people come through the drive-through and get it just as fast as cheap, crank it out. Let's get this just done as quickly as we can. And we'll compare prices and we'll have widgets in a machine and we will crank this commodity out. I think that that's bad for pet owners. I think that's bad for veterinarians. I think it's bad for the industry as a whole. I think that we all see how commoditization works in industries, right? Like we know where commoditization goes. And again, that is almost the definition of the race to the bottom, right? Who can get me the cheapest widgets, as fast as possible. And I go, to me, that's antithetical to why I think veterinarians and vet care providers got into medicine. I don't think that AI is necessarily going that way. I don't think that's necessarily an AI thing. I do think that I think that people are driven by convenience. I really do. I think people want things to be simple and they want them to be convenient. And it would be really nice to look at your phone and say, this is the cheapest service and this is the closest one to me. And I will drive through there and they'll have it ready for me and I'll pick it up. And in that will be that, or have it delivered to my house. Like that's kind of the model that a lot of us have come to. We use Amazon, we place an order and it shows up the next day. And I think people would like that for their vet care and they're getting DoorDash to get their dinners delivered. I think that's kind of where everybody really wants to go. I think that commodities are going to be a hard place to be in the next 5 or 10 years in this country. I think it's going to be very hard to make a living as a commodity. I think that your best bet is a service. And so I definitely am much more interested in subscription models, things like that, than I am saying, here's the widget and here's the price and here's the list and you order online and we'll have it for you when you get to your car, when you get here in the car. Like I just philosophically, I think that those are the forces that I kind of see and the changes that I would urge for veterinarians.
Can we talk about that a little bit more? Because one of the most interesting things that you did in the article was really wrestle with this sense of identity.
Yeah.
That when you have something that comes in that just kind of subverts your identity, that it's questioning your knowledge, all of these different aspects. And I think that's part of it. But then the other part that you talked about so clearly was the fact that, like, if you just abdicate responsibility to these tools and you just say, I'm not actually going to make that decision anymore, I'm just going to take the easy path, right? So that all the ease that you were just talking about, you were really struggling with that with your identity. And I think what you were saying was for yourself, that you choose hard things in order to make them easy. Like that is part of the reason why you choose those hard things, is because once you get good at that, they become easy and you can do more. But there's this like inherent drive that you were talking about as being a veterinarian, and that is being called into question with some of these AI tools. And so I'd love for you to speak a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So the thought exercise that came to me a while back that is really, I really like this thought exercise, and I want to try to do it justice, so I'll try to remember exactly. But imagine for a moment that you know a brand new veterinarian named William. Okay. And so William's brand new, and William goes into practice as a new doctor, and he's got his nice new little white coat on, and he's got a stethoscope around his shoulders. And when he gets there, William is assigned a mentor, and this mentor is trained on all the sources that you find acceptable, right? Like this person trained with the best of teachers and knowledge, and you don't have any concerns about how they were trained and what they were learned. They are available to William 24/7. They will write up William's notes for him and do on every appointment. They write his charts for him. They look at radiographs and give him their interpretation, which is much more experienced than his. He's brand new. They look at blood work and give him his interpretation. They work for almost nothing. They have endless patience. They never get tired of him. They will always take his questions, always. He can ask the same question multiple times in different ways. They will not become impatient. They will be supportive and positive towards him the entire time. And also, the assignment of this mentor to William is indefinite. There at no point will this mentor be taken away from William. Now, the question is, do you believe that William will be a great doctor? And that's the question that I like to put to people is, do you believe? And again, I understand. I think the answer rests with William. But I think that unfortunately, the path of least resistance for William is not towards greatness. It's towards being very comfortable asking the mentor, what should I do? What do you look at this? The biggest pushback I got to this article was interesting. I got a pushback, and this person said, Andy, it's always been that way. Like there has always been an easy path for veterinarians. They've always been able to just kind of phone it in. And I think, no, not on this magnitude, not at all. In the past, the easy path would be you did a crap job writing up your records. Today, you have to write your records. You don't even know what's in your records. You've got an AI scribe. You just hit copy, paste all, you know what I mean? And like, you don't even read the records. You don't even have to look at the radiograph. You can just look at the AI interpretation of the radiograph. You don't have to look at the blood work. Just read the summary at the bottom. Like that's where we're going, to the point that you can have your technician go into the room and they take the AI scribe and they get the entire history and all the things. And when you're walking in, the AI has already told you, these are the top 3 differentials. These are the rule outs. These are the tests I would recommend we take from here. And then I walk in, I talk to the person, scribe gets my notes. I come back out, I look at what the scribe says, and yeah, hey, let's run these tests. And then I just look at the summaries. And again, like, talk about phoning it in. And then I have a summary email that goes to the pet owner. I don't even read it. Just send it over. Like that stuff is, I'm not saying I do that. Don't get me wrong. But all like that, but that is what phoning it in look like now. Boy, it was never that way before. Like that you've never been able to have it so easy or comfortable. And so anyway, that's kind of the idea with William is this path of least resistance, right? The road to ruin is broad and gently sloping. It's easy walking and there's lots of company. What that means is the path to destruction is often the simplest thing. It's doing what's easy in the moment and easiest short term. The problem with that is I don't see purpose in being a pair of hands for AI. Like, I think there is a tipping point. There is a point where you are the operator using AI. And there's a part where AI is dictating to you what to do, and you are the flesh hands that carry out the AI's operation. When we become the flesh bots serving under AI, the commoditization of that medicine will be complete. In that way, we will become the robots, right? We will become the doers under the direction of the AI. And here's the thing. Once that happens, just say that AI gets so good. They're like, these are the things we need to do. This is what people need to do. Why in the world would anyone pay a veterinarian to do that job? If it's just a pair of hands and we trust AI, why in the world would you do that? Like that you're going to find somebody who costs less and they can follow instructions from AI. And then it's going to kind of be a race to what is the lowest we can pay someone to follow directions from AI and carry the service out. Now, granted, that's extreme version and that sort of dystopian. But that, to me, that is the path. And the path starts at the tipping point where AI uses you more than you use AI. And so I think that is important. For me, I think the path can still be bright and meaningful. I think that you have to, as an individual, as a doctor, you have to want it for yourself. You have to decide what it means to be a good doctor. And then you have to use the tools, which means you need to go into that room and you need to think about the history before you walk in and decide what you think. And then you need to walk in there and then you need to be present with that person. You need to do a damn good job for them. You need to do a good physical examination. You need to connect with them as a person. You need to bring real value from the human element. And then you need to make a treatment plan. And if you want to run it through AI and see if you missed anything, good on you, buddy. That's how we learn. That's how we get better. But that's a subtle difference. I think it's a critically important difference. You need to look at that radiograph. And I mean, really look at it. Understand it. Think about that patient. Think about what you're doing. And then you can look at the AI summary if you want, interpretation, see if you missed anything. That makes you better. When you glance at the radiograph and just read the interpretation, that makes you weaker. We're athletes. Like, we are intellectual athletes. And if you don't lift the weights, if you don't climb the mountains, you will get weaker. And when you get weaker, you're going to want to lean on your crutch a little bit harder. And then you get weaker and you're going to lean on your crutch a little bit harder. And before long, that crutch is all that's keeping you going. That crutch is the real star of the operation. And I think that's bad.
So that's
everybody
just like, I
have questions.
Okay. I have to do this. So, because this is a summary.
Okay, we're going to have to go very finite questions because there's a lot.
It's just a summary point.
That's good.
Yeah.
It's just a summary.
3 minutes each.
So just to summarize, like, the AI tools are perfectly compatible with being a great veterinarian. It's just how the tools are used by the veterinarian.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think so. Yeah, I think they absolutely are. And again, it's not a flaw. I'm not anti-AI. You know what I mean? The problem is, so there's this, oh shoot, what's it called? There's a paradox, and I can't remember the name of it. It'll come to me in a minute, but basically there's a competency paradox, right? And the idea is that it is possible to, so let's say you take a profession, you take a skill, and then you start to automate it and you add technological innovations and you say, this is going to make our people better. It is possible that you build better systems and better systems and better systems until the people that you wanted to improve are obsolete. And then what happens is at some point, your systems break down because you don't have anybody around who understands what they're really doing or how to fix them. And so you have bred out all the competent people, And then when the system needs to be repaired, there's no one around to repair it. The people running the system are not the ones who built the system. They don't understand what that the system is built on. And so the paradox is you innovate, and you innovate until you make the people who were capable of originally doing the work obsolete. And then when you have a problem, there's no one left who was originally there to do the work. And again, that's not about the vet industry. That's happened again and again and again across industries. And so anyway, yeah, I don't think that AI is bad at all. I really don't. I think that it's a really good tool. I do think that it's probably going to come down. And this, let me just say, I am not anti-AI at all. As I said, I am a perpetual optimist. And so the shining silver lining that I would like to walk out of here with is the belief that this is a really good tool. And I am optimistic, and I think is really great what we're going to be able to do. I think that we are going to be able to get better care for pets. I think that veterinarians are going to be more confident. I think the ability to help people with minimal resources is going to be higher than ever before. And veterinarians are going to have the ability to really drive their careers where they want to go. I think that if you lean into the human aspects of veterinary medicine and the aspects that are not going to be just easily handed off to AI, I think that you will increase in value. I think you can have a very meaningful career. I think that you can have a greater impact than you've ever had before using these tools. However, it is going to, in my opinion, require self-discipline by the individual. Like the easy path is going to be to hit summarize and see what it says. And again, I mean, look, guys, I write, I write all the time. So I write on drandyroark.com. I publish every single week. I publish. And it's not lost on me that when I'm writing in Google Docs, there's a button that I could literally push and say, finish this article. And it would finish that article. Like I see it every day. It doesn't go there. I don't do it. It is willpower for me to not press the literal easy button. But what happens if I do that? Where does that go? If that gets comfortable, am I a better writer? What happens to me? Like that's the end for me. You know what I mean?
I wonder in your example, just as like a thought exercise, do you think of that, you carry out the Dr. William example, do more pets get better care? And the reason I ask this is because there's a lot of examples in a lot of different industries. Let's take like photography or maps and directions. So for a long time, it was like one person who knew how to read and create maps. And then over time, now everybody on their phones has access to Google. And by the way, it's not just Google Maps and directions. It's like real-time information about businesses and traffic conditions and all these different and the concept of a map has changed so dramatically that if you were to bring that back to the first people who were the people who understood maps, they would look at this like it was alien technology.
Yeah.
And I wonder if two things can be true. That you're right, that a lot of what we consider to be GP basically is broadly available to every single person on Earth.
Sure.
As a result, more pets than ever before can get better care. I think you would probably agree with that. But as a result, the profession then needs to go into higher level forms of care. Maybe that's the creation of new specialties. We've already seen a massive expansion there. I think that there are skills, and this kind of gets back to it, that maybe we as veterinarians want to preserve or keep within our domain that might be significantly challenged. And I agree with you to the point of that easy button, which is why a lot of these tools now, they're trying to figure out how do we not give people just the easy button, the learning modes for ChatGPT. I think education is probably the best
Look
example
at education. Yeah, that's a great example.
Because to your point, like everyone can now spit out an essay. Turns out that's not good. And the incentives need to be reestablished. But as a result, the role of the teacher is going to fundamentally change forever.
Yes,
and I just wonder.
I do agree with that.
And I wonder if it's because for the longest time, veterinary medicine seemed relatively stable and safe, right? Like I often think about like a child knows that they want to be a veterinarian from like age 10, but not only that, they have a very specific definition in their mind of like what that job looks like. And I think what you are referring to is that, if we don't fight or preserve some of these, a lot of these skills that are pretty critical to what being a veterinarian is, might look dramatically different. Another analogy might be like bowling. Sometimes what bumpers, if you just have a single lane that's all bumper and you get strikes every time, have you really learned how to bowl a ball, right? Like, no.
And does your bowling improve over time? The answer is no. You can do it every day for 10 years, but if the bumper's right down the middle, like you're not going to get better. And I think that's the important point is.
But maybe just but it depends on the outcome. And this is what I'm trying to get at, where in that example, I might be a shit bowler. My score is 300. I might not be competent as a veterinarian in these areas in the same way I was before. More pets have better outcomes than ever before. Like, I don't necessarily see it as a zero-sum game in that. And I think that's where it's going to be interesting. I'm not exactly sure where it will end up. And I agree with you. We're in this really difficult period, but maybe to flip it around for a second, the most the thing that new graduates look, according to the AVMA, when they select a new job, is mentorship. And so I would agree with you that example you're talking about is a very slippery slope. But I would argue right now, we're probably closer to the other end of the spectrum, which is that people have very little support. They're not getting any sort of guidance. They don't have this sort of, and I think it is a long way between where we are today and that level of maybe intellectual atrophy. I hear you that we are on a slope, and I think that there's things that people can do now. A great example, by the way, and something that we've advocated for in this podcast, is that kind of like human in the loop, especially when it comes to dictation of medical records, because even that's causing trouble right now, where if you have no concept of what you're putting in the medical record, screw learning for a second. When you have an issue, you're responsible for it. You're going to get a complaint, and it's going to be because of a mistake you made, like the lawyers who are getting written up in court because they're making up legal cases, right?
Yes.
And so there is a level of maybe professional responsibility that can act as a bit of a safety net there, but maybe it's more the mindset that you're getting to, which is that, like, don't reach for the easy button. Don't take the elevator, lift the heavy weights. And I think you can draw a lot of analogies from other places where, getting to a destination in a car is not the same as running a marathon, and you're not going to feel the same. It's not going to help you in other ways, etc.
That's exactly it.
We're going to need to go around and do our main takeaways now at this point, because we blinked and almost an hour went by. So I'll take us away here, and then let's give the audience what we want them thinking about coming out of this conversation. So, I guess I'd start by saying, Andy, I think there are two things I really respect and admire about you that I know of so far, as, all the rich experience of sharing a Zoom for an hour have taught me. The first is, I think you are extraordinarily protective in a very loving way of the profession. Like I think you've kind of taken this responsibility on to keep watch. And I think that's very beautiful. I think this is an extremely noble profession, and I love that. And then the other thing that I think you're extraordinarily good at is seeing the value of emotional intelligence and connectivity within the relationships between vets and pet owners. And I think that's also incredibly important. And there are really kind of 2 points I'd love to leave our listeners and you kind of stewing on, or maybe even responding to. The first one is what strikes me as, some of the points of discussion and debate here. I feel like it's almost a discussion of identity. And, at least some of the concern is around what is AI potentially going to take away from us, and what am I losing that I signed up for and was really important to me with. And I don't say that in a very dismissive way. I actually think that's something that a lot of every profession is going to have to wrestle with. And it reminds me a lot. I told the guys this, over a text message before. There was a lot of concern when the written word became popular in ancient Greece, because the Greeks had something called the art of memory. They would create a memory palace where they could. It's really interesting stuff. They tied discrete facts to spatial memory, which humans are way better at navigation than memorizing discrete facts. And the Greeks thought, oh my goodness, everyone's going to be an idiot because we're not flexing this muscle now. But what ended up happening is we ended up specializing in some higher function than we were before. We were offloading some responsibility that we had, and we're specializing in some higher function. So my point is, going to try to be succinct here and accelerate to it. What are we losing by not picking up these tools and aggressively pursuing them? Right now, our TAM is, dozens of millions of pets, and there are billions of pets, in this world. And so by not kind of aggressively pursuing the ability to care for way more pets than we're caring for right now, it strikes me as sort of tragic. And then the second thing I really loved what you said was your concern about commoditization, and I share this concern too. That's actually how I built my company, Digital Empathy, was this belief that relationships matter more than really anything else. And what really strikes me is I think we as a profession have been able to resist certain things that have come our way before because we were kind of the gatekeepers. We controlled everything. I don't think that's going to be what happens here. I think we're going to be forced into adapting because this is going to be very consumer driven. You already mentioned you're seeing this show up in the practice, and I think that's going to happen more and more. And, you had mentioned one thing that it really stood out to me. I think there was something very perceptive about it, but something I'd push back on a little bit is what do pet owners really want when they're looking for a vet? And I think what you said is like how good of a match they are for me, like how high level their services are. And I think price is a big part of it for pet owners. Like I think that if you were to survey pet owners out there today, they would tell you they're hurting financially. They are concerned about price, and they would appreciate this additional layer of insight and information and the trust that they can have agency and make the right decisions themselves if they're presented with a full picture of context and information. Adam, let's go over to you so we can let Andy have the last word here.
Well, I'm happy to see my time. I'm curious, Andy, like I dumped a lot of different kind of perspectives on that I just love for your reaction to as you kind of think about this and in particular, what is your hope for where the future of GPs goes?
Well, I'm glad you asked me that. So here's what I think, right? Here's my hope. Okay. I think that you can use AI to help serve the vast majority of wellness clients. I think that is absolutely true. And I think we're all on the same page in the potential there, right? Just think about, I don't know. I use fitness as a metaphor, right? Like you can use ChatGPT. You can make a fitness plan for yourself. It used to be you went to the gym and figured it out on your own. Like I use that as an example of there are things that maybe we didn't used to know or used to need an expert for or advice, and now you can make those things. I think at-home care is going to get better. I think wellness care is going to get faster and easier and better, and there's a lot of different models that work for that. I think that's true. Here's what I would like to see with the GPs, and so this is currently my sort of battle. I think that you want to talk about increase in pricing. Specialty medicine is getting significantly more expensive, and it's becoming inaccessible to a lot of pet owners, right? The prices go up and up, and they're not bad guys, but those prices go up. There is a growing chasm of space between basic wellness care and specialty care. There is a growing space there, and I see massive opportunities there, my friends. Just as we've been trying forever to get veterinary technicians to work at the top of their license, I would love to see general practitioners working at the top of their license, which moves them in. Guys, we have gotten the easy button. We have gotten too fast at referring cases away. Like we punt cardio cases, we punt derm cases, we punt soft tissue surgery cases. All that stuff used to be done by GPs, and it still could be. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that. And I think it's a whole other episode about how we kind of got there and things like that. But I do not believe that we necessarily need to do those to punt those things. I think that there are veterinarians, and there are veterinarians out there right now who are working up cases, practicing at a high level. They are making a very good income for themselves, and they're also saving pet owners a significant amount of money and making services accessible when people would not be able to go and seek specialty care. Therein lies rewarding, meaningful opportunity for me. And so again, I told you I was going to walk out of here with my optimistic glow, and that's part of it. That's where I want to go. But the other thing that I want to leave you guys with, and this is coming off of sort of what Robert said, and I didn't get to say this, but I'm just going to tag this on. This will be my parting words here. I think there are 4 things that are happening or going to happen in vet medicine, in artificial intelligence in vet medicine. When I look at it, there's 4 fronts. The first one is AI is awesome and we're going to apply it to everything. And we are in that phase, right? We're going to put it on radiographs. We're going to put it on, we're going to put it on blood work. We're going to put it on Microsoft Word. We're going to put it on Slack. We're going to put it on QuickBooks. Like we are slapping that stuff on everything. And you guys are seeing that. So we're doing that. That's phase 1. Phase 2 is now that we have AI, we're going to build new things that haven't existed before and couldn't exist. And we're not there yet. The closest thing we have now is the AI scribe, where you say, only because AI exists can we now have this service or business. Now, you could argue against that and say, Andy, AI scribe, that's dictation software plus AI, which I would say, yep. But anyway, you can make that distinction. AI, but you're going to see more. As people say, this is what AI can do. Let's now make a thing that never existed before, right? There weren't airports until there were airplanes. Like that, that's it. You have to have the plane first, and then we figure out how to do airports. So those things are, I'm sure they're starting under works now. Things that could not have happened 5 years ago are now getting baked, right? Cool. So those are the first two phases, right? The third phase is, and you guys are going to hate this, but I'm going to say it, and then I'm going to drop the mic and walk away, is the pushback is going to come. And there's going to be pushback for two significant reasons. The first is misapplication. There are going to be people who try to use AI and they're going to use it for reasons that don't work. I'll give you an example. It is only a matter of time until corporations with AI scribes start to micromanage doctors. It is only a matter of time until they pull doctors into the room and say, Andy,
That's what you were saying.
You only recommended dental cleanings in 17% of your cases. And when you recommend joint supplements, you make moderate to weak recommendations instead of the strong recommendations we asked you for. And that is accessible. That is 100% doable. And they're going to be able to use AI to look at your invoices that you generate, plus what you said in the room. And it is you talk about scary 1984 stuff. That stuff is very doable. I don't think that will be the standard. I think people will really hate it. I think some people will get it wrong and they're going to get kicked in the stomach for it. People are going to, the door is going to swing because people are I am not putting up with this. I think that will happen. I think other people, the opportunities for using AI for performance management are great and awesome and positive and helpful, and we can train with it, and there's great things we can do. But there will be misapplication, you watch. And so people will use it inappropriately. And the other one is a lack of ROI. The amount of money that is pouring into AI right now is bananas. It simply does not make sense compared to what the return on investment is almost certainly going to be. I'm not saying that specifically for our industry, but when you look at the investments going in Wall Street, and AI is basically propping up our economy right now. And so just the investments that we're making are absolutely huge. There is going to be a readjustment. I'm not saying that AI is a bubble, it's going to pop. There will be a readjustment when people say, look, we've invested all of this time and we're not getting our money back out of it. And so I think that's phase 3. Phase 4 is the interaction with culture. And that is huge. I have no idea, and you guys have no idea, how are people going to use this? What do they want to do with it? Are people going to watch AI generated videos all day long like they watch TikTok? Or are they going to be like, this is weird, and then it's going to be a thing for a month, it's going to be gone? I don't have any idea, right? What are we okay with? Are we okay with AI powered drive-throughs? I think we probably are. Are we okay with are we okay with AI generated art? Are you okay buying a comic book that was created by AI and that no human artist made, there was no human involvement? I don't know. It depends. It depends on who you talk to. There's a lot of people who hate that idea. Would you take your kid to an AI bot as their pediatrician? I don't know. Are you comfortable with somebody who's, I don't know. Are you cool with AI generated music? If
Who's
the music
better at
is
it?
no, I mean, yeah, it's I don't know. And I don't know how people are going to feel it, or people can get tired of it. I really don't know. Do people want to talk to ChatGPT about their pet that is unable to move and they're pregnant and they're trying to figure out what's right and what is humane and they don't want to let their pet down? Do they want to have that conversation with ChatGPT or not? And if they want to, then that is going to be a very different future. And I'm not saying it's bad. It's just, it will be.
Different.
It will
100%.
be different.
It'll be weird.
And if they go, no, because in this story, Toby leaned in and said, I'm going to see what ChatGPT said. And his wife turned to him and said, I don't give a crap what ChatGPT says. I want to talk with Dr. Rourke. And that's what she said. I don't know if that's an uncommon response or if that's going to become more and more the norm. But that interaction between culture and AI, and where do people want this and where do they not want it? I don't know that you can make that up. I don't know that you can foresee that. I think it's going to be, I think we have to wait and see. I never would have thought that TikTok would dominate entertainment. That just, to me, if you told me what it was at the beginning, I'd have been like, that's ridiculous. Nobody wants that. And yet here we are. But there are other things that I think are amazing ideas and they have never caught on, and you just go, well, we just don't do that.
It reminds me like the physical representation of this. You can actually see at concerts now where like, I think if you were to ask people 10 years ago, 5 years ago, even a lot of people right now, do you want to look at people's, you want to see a concert through people's phones? Do you want to see a phone? It's like, no, like I would hate that. Even like look around, like everybody has their phone up, right? And
Yeah.
so I think to your point, this feature will manifest in ways that are in some cases brilliant, in some cases deeply uncomfortable. And what people are willing to tolerate is something where that line is very different to different folks. In the
Yeah.
same way today that like there are people who probably are looking forward to my kid getting dropped off by a self-driving car, and people
Yep.
that are like, I don't want to talk to your robot. If your robot is in my, they will have a Roomba in their house, right? And so it's just
Yeah.
interesting to kind of see this. And then maybe the last point, because I think that this is a really interesting one that you raised about that 1984 kind of example. You know, I 100% like, it's funny when you talk about these 4 phases, like I almost see all that happening right now to a certain
Yeah.
extent.
There's a lot of overlap there. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think you kind of can chart almost 2 potential scenarios. That one is that micromanagement situation, in part because the incentives and the trust and the culture of those practices haven't lent themselves to that level of transparency with the team. You can also imagine another situation where, as a practice owner, if I personally had those insights as a coach to help me be a better veterinarian, I might eat that up, right? And so I think it's the system in which a lot of these things are deployed, and is it being driven by these enterprises in a care model that a lot of veterinarians are frankly already rejecting? Or does that become much more of a personal lever for your own growth? And how does that change how you look at it? And I think it's the technology in both cases might be the same, but it gets back to the system in which you're deploying it. And I think that there's a lot of things that you raised today about the system of care that we're living in that maybe leaves itself quite brittle to the onslaught of these advances. And your point about, hey, if we're going to be talking about how wellness care gets more democratized, we have to be thinking about, well, what's the upside? How do we upskill and up level maybe general GPs to fill that gap between specialist care, who, by the way, they're not slowing down in terms of like the level of resources and personalization and technology that they're bringing in. So I think that gap of almost like advanced primary care is maybe that big new frontier for GPs in a world in which maybe some of the lower level stuff. So anyways, just a couple comments on that.
Well, and also, you know, how great is it if you're going to fill that gap, right? That new frontier of GP. We have AI. We can use it. What a great tool for skilling up and moving into that area. And so again, like I see optimism there, or possibilities there. The last thing I'll say too, in sort of, you got these 4 phases and these fronts, and I think you're right. Like we're already seeing these things, and so I don't think it's necessarily in order, but those are the big forces I see. The last thing is, you can never predict this. It's the watershed moments. Like imagine that a famous person died in a self-driving car crash. What would that be for self-driving cars? Like it could be the end of self-driving cars. You know what I mean? It's who knows what the defining experiences will be that make people go, I am not doing that. Like, I mean, it takes just the right moment of someone goes in, and again, like to your point with the legal cases where we have lawyers that are generating cases, and what happens when something significant happens and like a murderer gets off and it comes and the public goes, we cannot have this. History is full of those things. You know, it's full of these sort of lightning strike weird things that come up in culture, and it frames an issue in a way where people say, we're not doing that, or we're all doing that. And again, we're all in on it. And like, I don't know what those things will be. And so I cannot wait to see how this all turns out. That's where I am.
Aaron, any closing thoughts from you?
I just want to say thanks. Like, Andy, you are such a careful, thoughtful, reflective thinker that is such a good representative of like everything that's happening today. And the way that you're able to articulate it, I think we all just benefit so much from how you think about these things. So thank you for writing what you do. Thank you for being on the podcast. I always enjoy the time that we spend together. So really, really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks, man. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
I think you're bringing, like Aaron said, a really important voice in the room here. There was a Pew study that just came out that said 50% of Americans are more concerned than excited about AI. And so while there tends to be this, underlying optimism for this show, and I do think we have, points of disagreement here, I think you are really broadening and deepening the perspective for all parties, and super grateful for it and for your time. That's our show, everyone. This is the Veterinary AI Brief signing off with the very special guest, Dr. Andy Rourke. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Andy.